Hello, my name is Tolg, and I exist, therefore I think too much. I am reading the Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Nietzsche. I'm also having a weird night, so it's going to be possibly annoying, maybe fun. Who knows? Could be both. It's up to the eye of the perceiver. So, I also cuss when I rant, and if you don't like that, go away, because I'm not beholden on to anyone, as these are not paid. Ha! 18 is very short, 19 is very long. I will be ranting. So point 18, it is certainly not the least charm of a theory that it is refutable. If a theory is refutable, does that not put the theory to rest? It is precisely thereby that it attracts the more subtle minds. Is saying subtle mind a very kind way of calling someone stupid? It seems that the 100 times refuted theory of the free will owes its persistence to this charm alone. I feel like he's being insulting. Someone is always appearing who feels himself strong enough to refute it. He is being insulting. Well, at least he's upfront about it. Free will. Free will. I do have an argument against free will and for free will simultaneously. It is both. I think, and I will be subtly minded therein, I think that it does exist and simultaneously doesn't. In that, when one is born, that is against their will. Buddhism makes one believe that it is in their will, that they choose who they are born to and the life that is pre-planned and predestined per the individual they are born to. So, free will at birth, lack of free will through life. Sort of. If you do not believe in being able to choose your future ahead of time, past inserting yourself into the womb, then you are born without choice, and then throughout life you make a series of choices to end up at whichever destination. I believe that the destination you are predestined for. However, the in-between is what you can fuck around with. So I think there's free will up to destiny, and then destiny is whatever the fuck fits you in its time table. So that was point 18. Very short, and it was just him taking a jab at other people, saying, you guys are stupid, and I'm tired of you. Nietzsche's fun. I like Nietzsche. Crotchety old man. Alright, point 19. Let's get into it. It is very long and daunting. Philosophers are accustomed to speak of the will as though it were the best known thing in the world. Are they? I guess, we'll just go along with it. Indeed, Schopenhauer has given us to understand that the will alone is really known to us. Absolutely and completely known, without deduction or addition. But it again and again seems to me that in this case Schopenhauer also only did what philosophers are in the habit of doing. He seems to have adopted a popular prejudice and exaggerated it. Yeah, philosophers need to get paid. And I've stated this before, there is a book that does better by this. I don't know which one it is, but it's The Prince. It's The Prince by Machiavelli. You placate in order to get paid. And what I mean by that is you say something that is seemingly good at leading someone into the direction that would be smart or introductory of new information. And then you speak cyclically. And therein, someone can feel smart, even if what you're saying doesn't fucking make sense. Because they can walk away making a conclusion all the same, And you have neither insulted their intelligence by leading them to a logical conclusion in that you decided to go down a weird cycle, and neither have you decided for them what is best, leaving onto them their will, the ability to say they came to the conclusion and the understanding. So you get paid because you gave someone an ego hit, not because what you said was actually worth fucking saying. Not that The Prince is a terrible work of literature. It's reasonable. It makes sense. I just think that if one gave themselves time to think, they'd reach those conclusions themselves. Willing seems to me to be, above all, something complicated. Ooh, is it? To will is to put into motion, to put into action something I presume you have thought of. I don't know that is complex. Well, it seems to be for AI. Maybe it is complex. Something that is a unity only in name, and it is precisely in a name that popular prejudice lurks, which has got the mastery over the inadequate precautions of philosophers in all ages. So let us for once be more cautious, let us be unphilosophical. I highly doubt Nietzsche is capable of being unphilosophical, as he overthinks everything, and that is essentially what philosophy is. Let us say that in all willing, there is firstly a plurality of sensations. Wow. I'm going to sit on that. A plurality of sensations in all willing, in what you put into motion, what you put into action after having thought. You are seeing, smelling, feeling what you've put into motion, tasting. I do not agree with this. That is very poetic and very romantic. Namely, the sensation, well, you said a lot of sensations and then you go right into one of them, namely the sensation. What? Of the condition. Oh, what? You sensed a condition? Or the condition is the sense? Holy hell. Away from which we go. The sensation of the condition towards which we go. No. No, that is not a sense. That is an understanding. Oh, are they synonymous? Okay, if you are lost at sea, and you're treading water, most people have no fucking clue where the land is, and so oftentimes people will swim further into the ocean because their sense of direction is bunk. If you do not understand where the fuck you are, you would not know if you are going away or towards. So that is not a sensation, that is a predisposed understanding. And I am not entirely sure what the fuck this has to do with willing anything. Why was there directional input in someone having a will? Huh? Okay. The sensation of this from and towards itself, and then besides an accompanying muscular sensation. Wow, this guy is intense, dude. How? He's like a pigeon with, the fucking magnetic capacity to understand where north is. Muscular sensation of knowing when he is going away from something or towards something. That's intense. That is trained assassin level of sensory. Nietzsche has secrets. Which, even without our putting in motion arms and legs, commences its action by force of habit. Whose habit? Not mine. Sometimes I cannot control my legs and I just fall. Commences its action by force of habit directly. We will anything. So he means to be speaking purely on walking, I assume. Legs and muscular understanding. However, if you were simply your nervous system and the electrical input and output of go, breathe, there wasn't what some people spiritually argue as the soul, but the ability to understand so much as the computed coding of do. Then again, there would be no understanding of towards and away from. It would just be move. And so, on this, I disagree with him. Although I am also thoroughly fucking confused what the relevance is towards having a will. Directionally, I do not understand the relevance of directional inclination towards willing something. Therefore, just as sensations, and indeed many kinds of sensations, still don't agree, are to be recognized as ingredients of the will, so in the second place, you did not make your first point, so having the so be connecting word is that the second argument you make will rely solely on the first argument being real, and in the first argument not necessarily either being relevant or realistic. I would have to assume the second argument is going to be shit. So in the second place, thinking is also to be recognized. That should have been the first place. I don't think the first point was needed or wanted. Go away. And the second point, thinking, you cannot have a will without thinking. What in the fuck? Why the fuck would you point that out as though that's like some holy understanding provided to you from God and could not be reached without? This is logic. Thinking is also to be recognized. Thank fuck you're recognizing it. In every act of the will, there is a ruling thought. Wow. And let us not imagine it possible to sever this thought from the willing. You definitely can do that. You could absolutely sever the thought from the willing. It's called, changing what you think about something. That happens all the time. As if the will would then remain over. No. You could... Let's say you're going to war, and your reason for going to war initially is that you're a psychopath who likes mowing people down. And then somewhere along the way you meet a Buddhist in war, and this Buddhist teaches you a logical way to apply yourself to life, and you are born again. And therein, now your purpose of being at war is to follow rules. And simply and only that. You still have the same end goal, but the reason for that goal is different. So you still have the same will, but the thought behind the will has changed. And therein you can sever the thought from the will. Oh no, there's a third point he is attempting to make. In the third place, the will is not only a complex of sensation and thinking. I disagree with it being a sensation. But it is above all an emotion. to will something, to put something into motion is an emotion. No. But will can be born from having an emotion. But it is not an emotion in and of itself. I think Nietzsche just needed to get paid here. Up until this point, I don't think I've argued him this much on any point he has made, so I'm really worried about what happened to him at point 19, where he has not only written so fucking much, but in a bizarre fucking direction. This one seems the least thought out, and the majority of them have just been complaining about everybody else. And in fact, the emotion of the command. Command. That's an introduction of something, and no explanation of the introduction. Okay. That which is termed freedom of the will is essentially the emotion of supremacy in respect to him who must obey. So in points, was it 17? So it was 17 or it was 16. I want to say it was 17. Where he then goes into, is it the ego? Do we consider it as like the person themselves or the one who is doing it? So now he starts talking about the emotion of command. What made the command? And therein, free will, lack of free will. Who made the command? Does Nietzsche believe in God? I don't know why, but I was under the understanding that Nietzsche did not believe in God, and I again have no fucking clue how I came to that conclusion. Who's giving the command? That which is termed freedom of the will is essentially the emotion of supremacy in respect to him who must obey. Supremacy. Emotion of supremacy. Is there an emotion of supremacy? What is that? Is that what I call ego hit? Is that just being high on your own supply? There's a better way to phrase that. Huffing your own farts. What is a better way to phrase that? I don't know. I think that's what that is, though. Full of yourself. Him who must obey. And then he has, a colon and quotes, I am free. He must obey. This consciousness is inherent in every will. So is this what the will is saying? The will is saying, I am free, and he, being the person the will is commanding, must obey? So the will is in essence unto itself? Or existence? Wow. Nietzsche felt like a puppet to his own emotions? Like his emotions were wearing him and he was not in control of his own emotions? That would explain his incredible need for control. Because he lacked self-control. Wow. I think I just hurt myself. I feel kind of sad now. Okie dokie. And equally so the straining of the attention, the straight look which fixes itself exclusively on one thing, the unconditional judgment that this and nothing else is necessary now. Whoa. So also prior point made by Nietzsche, I believe, unless I was reading a different book, but I'm pretty sure it was this book, where he said, he recognized that people thought differently or had different means by which they thought of things. So, like I mentioned, I think in sensations. Some people think in sentences. Some people hear an internal dialogue. In that respect, there's another thing that I guess should be added on. I have multiple tracks at one time going. Like, I'll think of Shrek, the movie, and then in the background I'll have theme songs being played, and then on another track entirely I'm thinking of the chores I need to do. And it is occurring to me that Nietzsche might be a one-track minded kind of person where, they set their sight on doing something, they will only think about doing that thing until it is done. I feel like, definitely having multiple tracks going in my head at once is unnerving and always tiring, exhausting. However, being one-track minded could be kind of dangerous. Makes someone fervent. There's a word. I'm not getting that word. But, yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. This is all that is necessary. This and nothing else is necessary now. Seems... I hope he thought everything through to its, finite end, because if this is how he addresses everything in life, and he's going in the wrong direction, he'll continue going in the wrong direction until he's done. That's incredible. The inward certainty that obedience will be rendered. The inward certainty, the subconscious certainty that he must obey himself? He has no free will unto himself? Oof. And whatever else pertains to the position of the commander still has not been identified. That's actually kind of really scary. A man who wills commands something within himself, so the man is the commander. The person themselves is the commander. Hopefully. Which renders obedience, their own obedience to themselves, or which he believes renders obedience. And in being obedient, therein he has no free will? This seems like he has gone down a hole of existentialism and might be having a panic attack. A man who wills commands something within himself which renders obedience, or which he believes renders obedience. But now let us notice what is the strangest thing about the will? There's a lot of strange things here. This affair, so extremely complex, for which the people have only one name. And that's the end of the sentence. Fuck. Inasmuch as in the given circumstances we are at the same time the commanding and the obeying parties, and as the obeying party we know the sensations of constraint, impulsion, pressure, resistance, and motion, which usually commence immediately after the act of will. Dude, his control issues are so bad that he doesn't want to control himself because he wants to control himself. Fuck. Holy fuck. Oh, that is painful. Also, the assumption that this is how everyone is. Maddening. Oh, jeez. Inasmuch as, on the other hand, we are accustomed to disregard this duality. Oh, are we ever? Man, I do not exist like you do. And to deceive ourselves about it by means of the synthetic term I. You would get along well in, more ancient Japan. Prior to the 90s, not ancient. Ooh, that was bad. A whole series of erroneous conclusions, and just because you say it's erroneous does not mean it is, without any fact to back that up. Whatever. And consequently of false judgments about the will itself has become attached to the act of willing to such a degree that he who wills believes firmly that willing suffices for action. Alright, I think we disagree on the definition of what will means. And hopefully that's why I'm misunderstanding something. And this isn't as sad and dangerous as it seems. But I understand will to be putting something into action. It is the transitional phase of between thought and action. That is what willing is. So maybe we don't disagree. Maybe I'm just putting it into words that I hadn't prior put it into. And I'm used to disagreeing with him up until this point, so now I'm just thinking I'm gonna automatically disagree with him. I have exhausted myself, or Nietzsche has exhausted me, or both. Since in the majority of cases there has only been exercise of will when the effect of the command, consequently obedience and therefore action, was to be expected. The effect of the command was to be expected. Well, that was the thought that you had prior. What is that called? Assumption. You had assumed something would play out. If you did A plus B, you would get C. You had assumed C would be the answer, not C squared or something, But I am also lost on the relevance here as well. People only will something when they assume something? When they assume the outcome is as they expect? And if they cannot predict an outcome, they do not put forward their will? If that were the case, then the phrase "the blind leading the blind" wouldn't exist. Also, if that were the case, and that's definitively how humans are, then we would have no appreciation for chaos, and that's not the case. The appearance has translated itself into the sentiment as if there were a necessity of effect. A necessity of effect, as if there were. Just because you phrase it in a way that makes it seem like you're talking down on anybody for their understanding of reality doesn't make you right. As if there were. Cause and effect is a law of nature. Argue it as much as you want, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. In a word, he who wills believes with a fair amount of certainty that will and action are somehow one. No, I will things, but I also don't believe they're one. Why did you just put that on me? Meanie? I think in his ever-present need to control, he also needs everybody to be able to be simplistically defined. What a dangerous way to exist as a philosopher who also simultaneously hates everybody, especially his philosopher peers. He ascribes the success, the carrying out of the willing, to the will itself, and thereby enjoys an increase of the sensation of power which accompanies all success. So he really hates ego hits. And if anybody gets anything right, it could not have been because they had thought about how it could end up prior. It's because chaos favored them that day. Right? He's very negative. Very negative. And he hates that anybody would think well of themselves. Who hurt him? Who hurt him? Someone needs to go back in time and give Nietzsche a fucking compliment. And maybe a hug. Freedom of will, that is the expression for the complex state of delight. Oh, is it now? Fuck. That's... You're deciding reality for everybody. Okie dokie. Freedom of will, that is the expression for the complex state of delight of the person exercising volition. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Freedom of will does not imply any fucking sensation emotionally at all. A fucking sociopath can promote freedom of will and feel freedom of will and also simultaneously, not sociopath, probably is not I don't know what the fuck personality issue wouldn't be able to feel emotions, but one that doesn't feel emotions, can express freedom of will and not have any fucking delight in it. Ay, Dios mío, this is aggravating. It's the exact thing that I made a short on where I pet peeve. I hate that people put things in a box and there's no gray area. Like, no, it is not definitively this way. Fuck you. Fuck you. Who commands and at the same time identifies himself with the executor of the order. That argument relies solely on there is no self. If there is no self, then there cannot be freedom of will. However, if there is a self, and the self can identify itself, then there is freedom of will. And in that, his argument did not introduce that the self does not exist. I have to state that it's just being mean. Like, he just hates people. And he wants people to hate as much as he hates. Otherwise, this makes no fucking sense. Oh no, the book is shutting. It didn't shut all the way. Who, as such, enjoys also the triumph over obstacles, but thinks within himself that it was really his own will that overcame them. Okay, so... to make sense of what Nietzsche is saying, on the presupposition that Nietzsche is right, I am extending grace. Then the self is a superficial ideation of what we understand existence to be, and chaos reigns. And if anything happens to go along with a plan that one might believe they executed, that is just the favor of chaos that day. If he suffered, and I mean suffered, from the need to have control over everything, then that would amount, or that would afford him grace. That would afford him peace and brevity and forgiveness for failure. I do not identify reality in the way that he has described it. I do not agree with Nietzsche in this respect. I think chaos exists, absolutely, but I do believe in a balance in all things. I think that there is order in chaos, and that there is chaos in order. So I, on that principle alone, disagree thoroughly with this entire point. And I think this point comes from being worn down psychologically. I think he's miserable. And I think anybody that would subscribe to point 19 and believe that to be reality is probably going to make themselves miserable. And anybody else who has to suffer that. And I think it is perfectly fucking fine to get an ego hit. I just think that, people should pay attention to how they're feeding their ego, their need to survive, the ideation of the self, how they identify the self, and therein what they need to survive based on who they think they are. So if they get an ego hit off of, an easy one, the ideation of existing purely because of beauty. There is, in my library, I have 3 copies of one book because I love this book so fucking much. It's not my favorite book, but I probably love it the most, if that can make sense. It's The Picture of Dorian Gray. I think there is a very healthy way to feed one's ego, and I think there is a very unhealthy way to feed one's ego, and a prime example of an unhealthy way of feeding one's ego is described in The Picture of Dorian Gray. So, if you want to go fucking read that book, I suggest you read the unabridged version because it is so much more entertaining. So much more entertaining. Jesus Christ. Okay, so now he adds in speech that is bizarre and fanciful. In this way, the person exercising volition adds the feelings of delight of his successful executive instruments, the useful quote-unquote underwills or undersouls. I think maybe this is, because I'm not sure when the understanding of subconscious versus consciousness was introduced. So maybe this is hindsight is 2020 and I exist in 2026, so I can look back at what Nietzsche is saying and go, why aren't you just calling it what it is, the subconscious? And therein making an ass out of myself because psychology had not developed. But again, I do not know the time in which that would have been introduced, and if he has the ability to contemplate it or not. But it would be something to take into consideration. Maybe he was the first to ponder it and just didn't have diction for it yet. Or, maybe he believes in an entirely different dimension that rules our spaghetti monster type of ideation. That could also be. And who am I to limit him? Indeed, our body is but a social structure composed of many souls. Oh no. What the fuck? I mean, okay, another belief of mine is that the micro is the macro. So in that respect, I'd be forced to agree with him that, each atom is a soul unto itself. That's spooky rhetoric, the way he put it. I'm uncomfortable. It's spooky the way he put it. I like thinking of it in a different way, but I guess I didn't put words to how I thought of it, and putting words to it is spooky. To his feelings of delight as commander. Okie dokie. Okay, so having said that, he thinks everybody suffers a God complex, and that freedom of will is synonymous with having a God complex. Maybe he's right. I don't know. Fuck, I am so put out. Ouch. La fête c'est moi. I'm bad at French. I have no idea what this means. What happens here is what happens in every well-constructed and happy commonwealth, namely that the governing class identifies itself with the successes of the commonwealth. If the micro is the macro and we are all a part of God, then God does not deserve its ego, as God's efforts onto existence is all of our efforts. But simultaneously saying that would mean that we deserve our ego and the ego of the collective. But if the macro is the micro, then God does not deserve its ego. So we do not deserve our ego. Either we deserve our ego or we don't. I am unhappy. Oh. In all willing, it is absolutely a question of commanding and obeying on the basis, as already said, of a social structure composed of many souls, on which account a philosopher should claim the right to include willing as such within the sphere of morals, regarding as the doctrine of the relations of supremacy under which the phenomenon of life manifests itself. That was the end of it. The last bit was highly wordy. I am left to believe that it is like the potato sack race. We only deserve our ego if we collectively move in a direction we all agree upon. Otherwise, no one deserves to feel anything good about themselves at all. Ego hit. Deserving your ego is probably not the right way to put it, because the ego is just a means of survival, but an ego hit, a reason to continue surviving. Nobody deserves that unless we all collectively decide on why we continue to exist and the purpose of it. Wow. All right. I'm right there with Nietzsche. I feel miserable and sad, but in a slightly fulfilled way, a fulfilled sort of misery. And I'm left agreeing with him after disagreeing with him, which makes me uncertain of if I initially agreed with him or if I only agreed with him after a certain point. I think there are points I disagreed with him on. I still do not believe that willing is a sensation. This has been difficult for me. Okay. I hope it's been difficult for you, and maybe we can all have a difficult time together. Alright, you take care of yourself. Don't get sucked into a hole of isolation based on existentialism. Suffer your existentialism in a group with loved ones who care about you. Okay, bye. Take care of yourself, eat well, sleep well. Good night.